He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, everyone, welcome to the show. It is a new week, and thank God it's a new week. We are off to a slow start here in the United States of America in 2025. What did we have the first week? We had dual terror attacks. We got the mystery Trump Tower bombing, and then we've got the car ramming in Louisiana. So that was week one. Week two, we've got historic fires. I only laugh so we don't cry. It's sad circumstances. And can we do better this week? We got a lot to do. We got confirmation hearings coming up, but maybe not, because the fires are still bearing down on us. I will say a big thank you to everyone. It looks like the show is getting a nice little bit of traction. Even the fake news is covering us. I was heartened to see a story come out over the weekend in the New York Times, the failing New York Times, as President Trump calls it, how outlets on the left and right have covered the Los Angeles fires. And what is the first outlet they go to? Not only Breitbart, they go to the Alex Marlow Show. Alex Marlow, LA Mayor Karen Bass was MIA in Africa while her city burned. I like the story not just because we got covered by the New York Times, which is important. It's not like I care what the New York Times thinks, but if we're on their radar, it's a good sign that people are paying attention to the show. But something that was very cool that happened, they didn't take me out of context. They just played my quotes or typed out my quotes. What does the mayor of Los Angeles have to do with Ghana, said Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, on the Alex Marlow Show on Wednesday. Mr. Marlow also claimed the LA Fire Department had emphasized hiring diverse candidates instead of being prepared for fires. That's right. That's what I said. So that was very top of the New York Times article. So that's a good thing. So everyone telling 10,000 friends and family members about the show. If you stumbled across the show and you like it, please hit the subscribe button so I end up in your feed. And if you'd like to correspond with me, aloha@alexmarlow.com with questions, comments. I'm starting to get recipes from some of you, which I appreciate. That's nice. I got a lot of email. We'll get to that later in the show. I'll give some updates on the fire from a news perspective, because we are heading into a week that might not be good. Fire crews in Los Angeles are bracing for heavy winds. I can tell you where I'm at right now, I'm in one of these very heavy wind areas, which is very expansive. I can hear the wind whistling outside of my house through the walls. It's not good, because anytime we see any little bit of fire, you never know how far and wide it's going to spread when you're in these high wind environments. And as I noted, we are even pre-windy season here. The windy season in my neck of the woods really peaks in February and it goes into March. There it is. It's a huge gust. You could hear through the walls. It makes us all so vulnerable, because all of the same, unless your area has already been burned out. And even still, we were talking to some of my reporters at Breitbart who were in the heavily burned out areas in the Palisades over the weekend, and they still saw small amounts of fires. They were actively putting out fires on their own. So my reporters in the Palisades still. So the containment is very low for some of these fires. Some of them are higher than others. Palisades fire is very low containment level at this point, and we don't know exactly how widespread this could get if the winds pick up. And we start seeing some of these things like we've seen now, where we've got arson, people getting caught for arson. So let me explain the math on the arson. The people who are destitute, immoral people are trying to take advantage of the situation that we have by lighting fires. And while law enforcement, fire officials, neighbors are distracted, then they can run into people's homes, they can loot them. So if the homes are still standing, fine. And if they burn down, whatever. Sometimes when they burn down, there's still stuff that they can find if they scavenge. So it's all disgusting stuff, and we're seeing a lot of it. We saw one arson arrest over the weekend for a guy who was running around the hills with a blowtorch. What do you think that was about? Locals detained him. We had another story where a man was impersonating a firefighter. So he's impersonating a firefighter in order to gain access to some of the areas that are cordoned off by law enforcement. And luckily they figured him out. But it only takes one bad actor to start a massive fire in an environment like this, where we're so unprepared, where the leadership has not fulfilled any of those fundamental necessities, creating areas where there have been brush clearing and working hydrants and plenty of water, selectively shutting off power, fully staffed fire departments, ground hydration, emergency fire services, all this stuff that we're behind on this city. All of that makes it so that one bad actor can take out an entire town. So, and there's nothing that can be done. I mean, there's efforts being made, but there's nothing that can be done that can mitigate in time. I mean, this is a years-long process that we've been failing on. So we are very, very vulnerable. But yeah, there's a man, a blowtorch near the Kenneth Fire in West Hills, California, a guy named Juan Manuel Sierra Leyva. And guess what? Illegal alien. You guys shocked by that? So, and if it wasn't going to be an illegal alien, it's going to be a homeless person. So I'm not just trying to pick on illegal aliens, but we have too many of them. And we have too many homeless people who also start fires for similar reasons, and not also because they're crazy. So looters are running rampant. Another thing that we've normalized. First of all, we've normalized the burning of buildings. You might recall during the whole Black Lives Matter riots that we had here, where they were very bad in LA. Mid-COVID, you were allowed out of your home if you wanted to riot. If you had a high schooler who wanted to go to school, nah. If you want to go to church, nah. But if you wanted to go riot in downtown for Black Lives Matter, the mayor might join you. But recall that we discussed any damage that was done to structures is just structural damage, not a big deal. So that's how we talk about these issues in California. And it's not just California, it's elsewhere. But it's most relevant here. Same thing with looting. And I've written quite a bit about this. This will come up down the road when I reveal some of my research projects I've been up to lately. But California took very big strides to try to essentially decriminalize petty theft and theft of things under about $1,000, where it's essentially not a criminal offense, and making sure that there's wrist slap penalties or less, so that law enforcement doesn't have to deal with them, so that they could assert that the crime wave is going down. But this has an inverse effect. It ends up creating a culture of crime that raises the crime rate, but everyone is just too focused on the immediacy of their political ambitions to look down the field at all. It's just not how Democrats work. They're just trying to see what is the best for us immediately, what is the best for us right now. So that is where we're at, because we have a whole culture where we have tons of homelessness, tons of illegal aliens, fair bit of arson, and tons of looting. It's all culturally entrenched. It's part of what goes on out here. So 24 dead as of now. And this number is going to go up. One of the most horrifying stories over the weekend is a child star named Rory Sykes, who was born blind and had cerebral palsy. He died in the fire as his mom tried to save him. He's 32, lived with her in Malibu, 17 acres, must have been valuable. But he was stuck in the fires, and she couldn't lift him out, obviously. He had a self-contained cottage on the property, couldn't get him out. So it's devastating. It's devastating. And how many people are dead that we haven't counted yet? How many elderly people couldn't get out? How many people with any sort of a disability? I was reading one story about someone who died because of the only other person in the house had broken arms, couldn't carry him. All this stuff is going to come out. The death toll is going to go way, 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 way up. And I note this also as argument number 11 in my crusade to get people on the right to be decent to each other. The amount of comments I'm seeing on conservative platforms and conservative social media that California got what they voted for. I mean, it's so ghoulish. And if you're finding yourself doing this, then I encourage you to seek your local religious clergyman. Find your local chaplain and talk about all these the horrible thoughts you're harboring. So no one voted of child stars who were born blind with cerebral palsy to die in a fire. So it is especially the conservatives out here trying to fight the good fight for a very important state. So I don't think that I can make a better case than that. All these devastations going on, it's going to continue. So Let's be kind and let's try to be persuasive. What are the ideas that are going to most convince people to come to our side? And we're seeing a lot of defections. You pick up on some of these things, and it's not just the people in the tech world, but you've seen some of these reality stars. Like Khloe Kardashian is the latest one. And you note this stuff, not that Khloe Kardashian matters to me at all, but the point is that Kardashian family is, you got the impression they're probably right of center for the most part. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner's out there, but they don't say anything because they don't want to alienate anyone. And now they feel like the water is so warm. Some of them are coming out and just saying flat out, the Democrats got to go. I mean, that stuff is very useful long term. It's deeply frustrating short term because you wish, well, where were these people for the last decade? It's annoying. Joe Rogan's out there saying America has unique freedom because the First Amendment is protected by the Second Amendment. I mean, this is a talking point that I've been telling students at Young America's Foundation conferences for 15 years, this exact point. So these are new points. So it's a little frustrating to see the Bill Maher's of the world and the Joe Rogans of the world and some of these Hollywood stars recycle points we've been talking about. But do not be frustrated now. Embrace it, appreciate it, welcome them. We got to welcome them. This is how we run up the score. The left's humiliating themselves. And then now we're in the circular firing squad mode where they're going to start firing guns at each other. They're going to start pointing the fingers at each other. More on that momentarily. A couple other things. This is also, as I noted on the show, I think it was Friday's show, how this has to become the Abu Ghraib of the climate change movement. Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend, who I'm told is 26, so that's as old as it gets, geriatric for DiCaprio standard. They've escaped the fire in a private jet. So DiCaprio has gone around the world lecturing people on climate change. Luckily he doesn't lecture that much, but we all know where he's at. He kind of chilled out in the lecturing, which was smart. But a big climate change guy, and he's taken private planes to flee. It just shows you these people weren't serious about preparing for whatever climate disaster might take place. What they were in it for is they were trying to get accolades. They were trying to get cultural clout. And they were taking on a foe that can't punch back. If your main villain is the climate or change to the climate, then you're in a very safe spot because no one's going to come after you if you take on that target. Hollywood is going to be very lost with this because they're going to either have to change or they're going to have to come to grips with the fact that they've gotten so much wrong for so long. Tyler Perry, the media mogul who is mostly based in Georgia, but obviously is a big fixture in Hollywood, he's blasting the greedy insurance companies because they dropped thousands of customers before the LA fires. Does he know that they were only dropped because of Democrats? He was only dropped because of Democrat policies which capped the amount of money that insurance companies could make, making it so that they would simply lose money by giving fire insurance. They had no way to turn a profit, so they got out of the business. It was Democrat policies that did this. Perry, of course, card-carrying Democrat, donor to Democrats, funder for Democrats, all that stuff. So they don't know how ignorant they are because of the extent to which they're bubbled. And that is where we should be frustrated, but also provides deep opportunity because people are open-minded to trying to solve these problems. Because all of a sudden the obsession with DEIs and abortions and climate change, it seems a little more frivolous at this point in time. We're talking about illegal migrants getting arrested for arson in the middle of the biggest fires in the history of the state, maybe in the last 100 years in this country. So, did you guys catch that Ukraine's offered to help the LA government with wildfires? Zelensky firing off a tweet, cutting a video. I love it. I don't know if he's trolling or not. I don't think he is. I think he's being earnest. But wasn't this my joke last week, is that we fully funded all these fire stations in Ukraine? And so for all of you who are saying, for all of you who are talking about the necessity for the California that we voted for, well then, I mean, the whole country's cutting checks to Ukraine. So we're at least part of America. Let's not be too mean, guys. Senator Ed Markey, Democrat from Massachusetts, has claimed the LA fires are a climate disaster and they were stoked by Trump. So it's Trump's fault. This is a real thing that's happening, is that people are trying to blame Trump for this somehow, that Trump had done something wrong. I don't, the logic is so strained, and yet people do try it. Jen Psaki tried this, former White House press secretary for Biden, running cover for her people. She was on MSNBC, and she was saying it was Trump's fault and Musk's fault. Let's play some of this. This is, you have to hear this to believe it.
And with these fires still burning, we are facing important questions about how to mitigate and prevent disasters like this in the future. Fact is, leaders will need to confront a very complicated and challenging reality moving forward. But right now, that is not exactly what is happening. Instead, Donald Trump and his allies are injecting half-truths, misinformation, and flat-out lies in some cases in order to score a version of political points, I suppose. We saw something similar play out just this past October in the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, when Trump repeatedly lied about FEMA spending disaster relief funds on migrants, which didn't happen. Also baselessly claiming that the Biden administration was absent and incompetent in delivering aid, despite what elected officials of both parties on the ground said. Those lies were then spread and amplified by the richest man in the world.
Okay, before we get to Musk, do you have any doubt that FEMA money was spent on migrants? Of course it is. I want to walk through the logic of it. I didn't look this up. I didn't try to confirm it, but I can tell you there's a logic to it. And I'll give you an analogy. When people come to the United States and they're illegal aliens and they're drained on the system, when they want their children to get educated, we accept them into our public schools. When they show up at our hospitals, we treat them, even though they can't pay for their stuff. Why do we do this? Because we're a fundamentally decent people. And logically, it doesn't make sense to have a bunch of uneducated people who are running around, if we have no intention of deporting them, and a bunch of sick people dying in the street. We've collectively decided that if they're going to be here, they're going to get some basic stuff. So why, if we're in the middle of a disaster, why wouldn't the money be spent on illegal aliens? Of course it is. I'll tell you, Mrs. Dr. Marlow's hospital, where she did her training in the LA area that nearly burned down last week, tons of migrant population, and you can bet a lot of them are illegal aliens. When she walks in to deal with a new patient, a new consult, as they call it, she's not asking for their papers. She's just giving them the best care that she can do based on her training. So that's how we work in this country. That's how Americans are. So is there something kind of sinister about all this, that's how we set up the system, where the people who just come here illegally can take advantage of the people who are here and pay into the tax base and who built the system? Yes, of course, it's horrible. But it doesn't mean we're going to stop treating people and giving them the basics. So, of course, if FEMA is coming around and they're seeing people in need, I don't think they're going to deliberately look over them and say, well, wait a minute, where are your papers at? Can't get any aid. And we know what FEMA was up to during Milton and Helene. They were looking over Trump voters' homes. They admitted to it. They copped to it. We went through this. These are very early days of the Alex Marlow Show. Right after we launched, it was a big story. The FEMA officials instructed relief workers to skip Trump voters' homes. It's true. It's not a conspiracy. They copped to it. I was thinking a little bit about Milton earlier because recall when Ron the Sanctimonious, when he was getting Florida ready, how he got, I think it was like 50,000 linemen out there and he's doing the photos of it, 50,000 linemen staged and ready to roll out for Milton. That's what Newsom and Karen Bass should have been doing before this round of fires. They should have had National Guard ready to roll. They should have had firefighters from all over the country or the world saying, we're going to need you. Stand by. Please help us be prepared. And said what was going on. And Newsom was behind and Karen Bass was in Ghana. We do have a story on this at Breitbart News today that Los Angeles Mayor Bass said she would not travel internationally while she was campaigning. People have to understand how Democrats think. They think of politics as above all else. As Dennis Prager says, politics uber alles. So they think of it more important than family, more important than career, more important than God. They think of politics as the ultimate. And as collectives, they think of world politics and national politics as way more important than local politics. So they're very good at organizing on a community level, but they do think of it as a way to get broad wholesale change throughout the country and really the world. Their ideal is the one world government. You guys probably caught last week that Jack Smith finally resigned. You guys remember where we got Jack Smith? Where Merrick Garland found him to lead the investigation into Trump, the special counsel? He was at The Hague, the International Kangaroo Court at The Hague. So America was too small fry for him. He had to go to some sort of phony international court to try to prosecute alleged war criminals. So that's the ultimate for Democrats. The bigger, the better. The more universal, the better. So Karen Bass is not looking at her job as LA mayor as about being mayor of LA. She's looking at it as a stepping stone for whatever is next for her. Something international, some ambassadorship. Maybe she'll run for Senate. Maybe, who knows, vice president. Who knows what she could be. So she doesn't care about the people of LA. She cares about her own career and she cares about the world. She doesn't see herself as doing an act of service for this city. She sees herself as someone who is on a path towards being a bigger player in the world community. So it's what it's all about. And that's why she said she's not going to travel internationally. And of course, right away, traveling internationally, going to Ghana, when all the forecasters could have told you that this is a high-risk situation with these 100-mile-an-hour winds. All right, let's play the rest of this clip from Psaki.
And in the world on the social media site that he owns. So I guess none of us should have been shocked this week when Elon Musk posted that the Los Angeles Fire Department prioritized DEI over saving lives and homes. That's an exact quote.
Of course they prioritize DEI. The fire chief, the top 3 fire chiefs are all lesbians. Is that not wild to all of you? Think of all of the people who would fight fires on Earth. Do we think that that's not that we're supposed to believe that's a coincidence? It just so happened the 3 most qualified people in all of LA all happen to be lesbians. Does any of you buy that? Is there one person who buys that? It's so fundamentally dishonest. It's really brazen that she's willing to do this. Look, if you think about the job of press secretary, I mean, you've got to be willing to fudge a little bit, right? So but once you're out of the job, then you don't have to do that anymore. You can be somewhat honest. Noteworthy that now we've got circular firing squads amongst the fire chief and Bass. The fire chief is now pointing her fire, so to speak, at Karen Bass, suggesting that she'd been let down. And she has, in a way, because Bass cut the fire budget by, what was it? I keep seeing different numbers, but it's at least 17 million. That's the lowest number I've seen. So this is very important stuff to think about, because if you're seeing rift within the Democrats, then it's going to even help us ramp up the political score. But also, maybe we'll get some change, actually. Maybe people finally start not being afraid of if they're going to offend someone who's got a more powerful job, who get them a more powerful job, and start calling things as it is. So, but the fire chief, one of the Kristins, they're all named Kristen. Kristen, Christine, Christina, all spelled with a K-R-I. Isn't this surreal? The 3 lesbian fire chiefs? So it's just hard to believe. It is just hard to believe that is just the scenario that we find ourselves in right now. The LAFD's $300,000 per year diversity chief has sparked fury by defending DEI by blaming the victim. This is from the New York Post. I'm reading. He got himself in the wrong place. This is Christine Larson, the deputy chief, who leads the Equity and Human Resources Bureau. Equity is a fake word designed to give the left whatever they want. Equity is whatever the left dreams up at that moment. That's the definition of equity. But there's a man who couldn't get out of a building because no one was strong enough to carry him out. And her response was, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of the fire. Basically meaning, women are not going to be quite as strong. There's a lot of women in the force because of equity. And that means that some men, you're up SHIT's creek because not everyone's going to be able to carry you out. I will say Larson makes a $307,000 a year as of 2023. Man, good work if you can get it, just to pass the buck. I will say there is an ounce of truth to it that everyone should think about, is that you don't want to trust the government to be your last resort. In fact, let me phrase this differently. The government is merely your last resort. You don't want to trust the government to save you. You want to be prepared for a fire on your own. You want to make sure that you're in physical health. If you're not in physical health, you want to make sure you have contingency plans. You want to make sure you've got whatever you can to fight the fire. You want to make sure you're keeping up, staying in shape. You want to encourage people in your life to be mobile. So that it is only in the absolute worst case scenario do you need a firefighter to carry you out of a building. So we all can't prepare for the worst case scenario. I'm certainly not prepared for the worst case scenarios. But I would like to hope I'm more thoughtful than others. So do keep that in mind, is that it's no excuse to have this DEI nonsense, and I hate the buck passing, but it is an important reminder that the government is not magic. We get lulled into this thing in society where we want to call on the government to do basic stuff, and people just have this impulse that I'm going to complain, I'm going to call 911, I'm going to rat, I'm going to snitch, I'm going to hall monitor. It's not good for the soul. What's good for the soul is, can I solve the problem on my own? And then if you can't, then you tap the government at the end. And the fire department is part of the government. It's part of the government we like. But LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley is throwing Bass on the bus. Let me be clear, the $17 million budget cut and elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. Over the last 3 years, we have been clear that the fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are. I have also requested multiple interim budgets to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LA Fire Department is. So calling out Bass, but it is, it's not just Bass. It's Newsom too, and I want to just only point finger Bass. And the woke hiring in the fire department is not good, discourages people from joining up. But let's try to move forward. Newsom's going to suspend rebuilding regulations after the wildfire devastation. This is going to be such a saga, the rebuilding of California. It's so expensive. There's not going to be enough builders. There's so many regulations. You're rebuilding in an area that's going to be much less desirable temporarily. Over a decade, it's going to be very desirable again. But short term, there's no community there. Part of the appeal of this particular Palisades neighborhood where John Kahn, our COO of Breitbart, lived, where Joel Pollack lives, these are communities. These are, your neighbors. You can walk to school. You can play outside in front of your house. It's not an impersonal thing. And when you're building from scratch and it's taking years, then there's going to be no community. So Newsom wants people to rebuild and not just to completely leave the state, because these are high earners in the Palisades. As I've said, these are new money people. These are people who lived the American dream and fulfilled it. He doesn't want them going to Tennessee and New York and Florida and Texas and Arizona. He wants them to rebuild in California. So he's going to take off some of the regulations. But it makes you think, why were there so many regulations to begin with? Were the regulations doing anything? No. The regulations were just fisking the taxpayer some more. You create more government jobs, more bureaucracy is more jobs, more government workers, more Democrat voters. So you want a big bureaucracy if you're a Democrat. And what it does is it slows down the works for the taxpayers. So you keep getting more money out of the taxpayers and you keep squeezing them and squeezing them and squeezing them. So now it's desperate. So all of a sudden the regulations are going to come off. We'll deal with that later. The regulations aren't the priority. The priority is to get people building right away. He wants people building immediately. Immediate cleanup, immediate building. And he's going to go hard for this because not only is it good for the state, it's imperative for his political future. If he wants to be president, and he does, he has been wanting it forever, then he's going to have to get this stuff going. So I want him to get it going, but just know that it comes from a place that's a indirect admission that the way he presided over the state in the past, it was completely irresponsible.
January 20th is the day, and Washington, D.C. is the place. That's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. He gets a whole new inauguration. It was already 45th. Now it'll be 47. And we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. It includes airfare for you and a guest to Washington, a 3-night stay in our nation's capital, tickets for the presidential inauguration, and much more. Don't miss this historic opportunity to celebrate the greatness, the history, the excitement of a presidential inauguration. To enter, you see the link in the show notes for this episode, or go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. Guys, I've said this, that this is the marquee event on anyone's social calendar for the year, really for the decade for most people. And you get a chance to go. I don't see why you wouldn't give it a shot. SalemPodcastNetwork/Trump. All you got to do, and you'll get your name on the list. And let's see if you can win. I hope you do. All right, so I want to alert people to places where they can go to contribute. Our friend Mike Cernovich, who I did an amazing interview with on this show, I encourage you to get that podcast. He's going to Give, Send, Go set up, and everyone should go check this out. So far, he's raised $239,000. I want to see that number go up. California Fire Relief and Aid, givesendgo.com/California Fires, and you can give there. Very worthy. Rick Caruso, the man who should have been mayor, and he is the former water commissioner for LA, narrowly lost to Karen Bass. He's fundraising big league, pledging $5 million himself to the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation. He's got a goal of $20 million. Support lafd.kindful.com. Support lafd.kindful.com if you want to donate there. And again, Cernovich's one is givesendgo.com/California Fires. Good things to do if you feel like contributing. Caruso was the subject of a absolutely viral video we put out at Breitbart, where he saved his Palisades Village Mall with his private firefighters and water tankers. And millions upon millions of views I saw across social media platforms. So you probably saw it if you're on social media at all. It was by far our hottest piece of content of the year thus far at Breitbart. Video that we took driving around, Joel Pollack grabbing it for us. And some people are starting to criticize him for saving the Chanel store, but not surrounding local businesses and homes because he saved his own mall. The guy ran for mayor. He wanted to be in charge of this stuff. And he got rejected by a narrow margin, not by the voters of the Palisades, but by the voters in general. And so he saved his incredibly important business. And he's getting criticized even by this woman who I've never heard of, so I won't call her out, but she's allegedly a California conservative thought leader. That's what I'm reading. Criticizing him for saving the Chanel store. I tell you, a lot of people work at that Chanel store, and they work at the Erewhon fancy market they got there, and they work at all the restaurants they got in there. I told you I've frequented this mall. It's an amazing mall. Beautiful place. So it is noteworthy that how close we missed out on having someone pretty good. Instead, we got the empty reservoirs, and we got the BIPOC four-spirit furries, the fire department. The media is trying to put the pieces together. Maybe I'll do some more media clips tomorrow on how they're trying to deal with this stuff, but it is a tough spot for people on the left because they messed this one up, and now they got to try to put the pieces back together while they're pointing the finger at each other. Newsom, by the way, got announced over the weekend, is continuing his $50 million effort to Trump-proof California. He set aside $25 million for the State Department of Justice to carry out federal litigation, $25 million in grants for illegal immigration, for immigration legal services and support groups. So he wants to help people avoid deportations. And all of this time and energy and effort spent that should have been getting prepared for the biggest catastrophe, maybe in the state's history, probably in the last 100 years. And that death toll is going to go up and up and up. And the culture of here is just never going to be the same. All right, I want to touch on some other stuff while we can. Trump's 13 cabinet nominees set for confirmation hearings this week. We've got some initial write-ups, but it starts big league tomorrow. Doug Collins, Department of Veteran Affairs, Pete Hegseth, Department of Defense, Doug Burgum, Interior Department. So we should get some good talking points starting tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to this. I doubt we'll have any for tomorrow's show, but we'll have them the rest of the week. So stay up to date at Breitbart.com. Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, Sean Duffy, John Ratcliffe, Marco Rubio, Christopher Wright, the Energy Secretary, Russ Vought, Office of Management and Budget, Wednesday.
Scott Turner for Housing and Urban Development, Lee Zeldin on EPA, Pam Bondi day 2 for Senate Judiciary, and Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, Thursday. Must-see TV, Hegseth going to be the main event for tomorrow, definitely, because he's the one that maybe there's the most controversy surrounding, but we're seeing a lot of outpouring of support. Hundreds of Navy SEALs and veterans marching in Washington, D.C. to support Hegseth. Absolutely must get confirmed. Absolutely must get confirmed. And there is no way that things could get worse than they already are now. We need to drain the swamp. We need to get all the deep staters out. We need to get the wokesters out. Remember, we wokeified the military the same way we wokeified the LA Fire Department. So Hegseth has been a crusader against that, highly qualified. Should get a chance. He should get a chance. All right, other stuff that's going on. Joe Biden was out there talking, and I always like to play when Joe Biden's talking. I got some Biden audio. Let's play some Biden audio.
The whole idea of walking away from fact-checking, as well as not reporting anything having to do with discrimination regarding the TPS, I find to be just contrary to American justice, the way we talk about one another. Telling the truth matters. I mean, I know I'm on national television, but you all are local reporters and national reporters. I'm not, this is not a real question, but what do you think? You think it doesn't matter that they let be printed?
He has no idea where he is. I don't think he has any idea where he is. So he's talking about how Meta is going to drop the fact checking, but because the fact checking got deeply politicized by the Biden administration, they were pressuring him to fact check true stories as false and to block the reach of true stories because they hurt Joe Biden. And Zuckerberg didn't take kindly to it, and he sucked it up for a while. And now he's over it because the culture shifted, and he feels like it's better for the future of Meta if he stands up to the wokesters. It was funny. I did read I won't read it now because I don't want the show to go too long, but I did see a sniveling tweet from the guy who came up with the Meta tampons in the men's room policy. He's been fired. So look, I got a lot of problems with Zuckerberg, but if he's going to fire the guy who put the tampons in the men's room, then the world is in a worse place because of that. But Biden equating fact checking and truth is exactly one of the things you got to do with your left-wing friends. You got to encourage them to get out of their bubble. Is that the people who are in charge of the fact-checking got the biggest stories of the century wrong. Biggest ones being Russiagate, Russia collusion, and the latest, I guess, being all these lawfare against Trump, all of which is phony and fake. There's not an ounce of worth in all of it. So many things, and it's just important that we hold ourselves to a very high standard for truth. And we do this at Breitbart News. I want to highlight something, and this will be rubbing it in some people's faces that I like, but I have to do this. An appeals court ruled that Fox News must face Smartmatic's defamation lawsuit. So recall that Fox lost a defamation case against Dominion Voting Systems, where it was settled. And Smartmatic's got a $2.7 billion defamation suit. These are all based off of attacks on some of the voting systems. I've discussed election integrity issues, threats to election integrity, for as long as they've given me a microphone. And this goes back to when I was a weekend host on SiriusXM. And there are legitimate threats to election integrity. For example, Mark Zuckerberg funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into a get out the vote effort, and these drop boxes that are supposed to be COVID safe, but are really just designed to get Democrats to vote. All that are legit threats to democracy, but it wasn't these voting machines this time around. And at Breitbart, we didn't cover it in that way, that the voting machines were going to get flipped. And we're still standing now. We would be out of business if I allowed for us to cover it in the way that some of the other networks, not just Fox, but other networks too. But they indulge these conspiracy theories that were very popular on right-wing social media that we resisted. And we resisted despite intense levels of criticism from our own audience because there was nothing to them. And there wasn't nothing to them because we don't love Trump and think he got hosed. We love Trump and thought he got hosed.
But we didn't think he got hosed because of these voting machines. We thought he got hosed by all these last-minute rule changes, tech manipulation, I would say, less than legal community organizing done by folks like Stacey Abrams and Mark Zuckerberg. All of that is what hosed Trump. It's not these vote flipping machines, but the vote flipping machines, I guess, indulge some sort of live action role play. We're all in a spy thriller conspiracy land that a lot of people like to do online, which is highly entertaining, but it's not real. And I try to, at Breitbart, give you guys the truth. And so this was never the way that the election was getting rigged. And Vox is still having to deal with it 4 years later, and they got to face another defamation suit. So just know that if you ever find that you and I are on the wrong side of things, then just understand I'm trying to give you a genuine take on the news every single day. I'm trying to give you what I believe are the facts, what's the truth about what's going on. And I'm going to do it fearlessly, even if I feel like 75% of you in the audience aren't with me on a certain topic. And I know some of you are probably, clutching the arm of your chair right now because you're probably so irritated that I'm dismissing that there was actual vote flipping in 2020 with the voting machines. But I am dismissing it. And I think that we would have seen the receipts by now if it was true. And if we'd covered it in the way that some of our competitors had, we would not be here. This show would not exist. Maybe it would, but it wouldn't be as big. All right. So important. I got to bring that up. Other stuff going on. I got more Biden. I'm going to play a little more Biden because Biden said something that was so fun. I'm going to play this.
Easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. It wasn't about, I thought it was important to unify the party. And when the party was worried about whether or not I was going to be able to move, I thought even though I thought I could win again, I thought it was better to unify the party, and it was the greatest honor in my life to be president of the United States, but I didn't want to be one who caused a party that wasn't unified to lose an election. And that's why I stepped aside, but I was confident she could win.
They both could win. They both could win. Kamala would have beaten Trump. She ran against Trump and she lost. Too fun. I'm going to miss him so much, guys. You know he's one of my favorites. Other than Trump, he might be my favorite character ever. I'm going to miss him. I hope he comes up with something cool to do. Maybe he'll go Bill Clinton and he'll start just sort of taking shots at Democrats every once in a while. But he says, I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. Kamala ran against Trump and lost. Join the party, Mr. Joe. All right, some media shakeups going on. Chuck Todd's going to leave NBC. Chuck Todd was broken by Trump. Chuck Todd's a smart guy and was actually a good journalist. And he was liberal, but I don't think he was unwilling to buck his own party until Trump broke his brain. John Nolte many years ago did a very interesting interview with Chuck Todd. It was fascinating. And you could see he's a bright person and a capable person. And once Trump got in there, then he just lost it. He lost his fastball, and now he's going to leave NBC News, going to do something else. We'll see. Jennifer Rubin, a frequent star of this show, she's going to leave the Washington Post, and she's going to start something called the Contrarian. I think they should call it the Conformist. She's not a contrarian, she's a conformist. She says the most hysterical stuff she can get away with that satisfies left-wing people, even though I think she used to be considered a conservative, I think. Anyway, the John Nolte says she's exiting the Washington Post to spend more time with her cats. We want to attack more cat ladies. We don't want to do that. That's not good. So recall that Jennifer Rubin had this famous line.
Republicans want to kill your kids.
No, that's right. They want to kill your kids. I guess that's a contrarian approach. Definitely. Not rooted in facts. I will say that. So, all right. Aloha at alexmarlow.com, but we'll keep an eye on that, the contrarian. Maybe we'll end up giving them a lot of attention and then they'll grow thanks to us policing it over at Breitbart News. I wish her the best. A lot of defection in Washington Post. Not a cool place to do business right now. Let's see if they make some changes. The LA Times is talking about making changes. LA Times for me is one of the sleeper losers of this whole fire news cycle, there's a few real bad guys here that have not gotten any credit. And one of them is the LA Times. I'll comment more at a different show, but it's the LA Times who for years covered up for all these frauds, endorsed Karen Bass, endorsed every bad actor in this whole group. And now all of a sudden the owner wants to act like he's one of the good guys. Patrick Soon-Shiong. Let's see how that goes. Look, welcome to the party, but let's see how it goes. All right, I got a ton of email. I want to get to some of it. David Johnson emails, the Allen Bragg prosecution of DJT is sad and dangerous. I'm reminded of the quote of Benjamin Franklin, only virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. Are Juan Merchan and Alvin Bragg virtuous men? The idea is what instructed the election of 2024 more than anything else. It is my hope that the Trump administration will be guided by virtue. I totally agree. Virtue is not in fashion on the left in this country. On the right, less so too. My point about the Smartmatic stuff and the Dominion stuff is the stuff is all bogus. And if you were reporting it, it was not a virtuous thing to report. I'm not saying some people weren't well-intentioned. They might have been. But there was no virtue in any of these Trump prosecutions. In Bragg and Merchan are bad guys, but they're arguably not as bad as Letitia James and Arthur Engeron, who had the New York civil case. How about Fani Willis? I think Fani Willis is a great person. Fani Willis, who is the daughter of a Black Panther activist who was in a relationship and lived with Angela Davis, the unrepentant Marxist communist. They're not people of super high character. I'll tell you that. And the Democrats turned their whole party over them. I mean, Stormy Daniels, porn star, porn director, professional provocateur. They built their whole case around Michael Cohen, the rat, who is a known liar, who lied to Congress, pathological liar. They put all those people in charge of their whole party. That was their best chance at stopping Trump. How about the Cheney family? And making boatloads of money off of Americans going and fighting and dying in wars overseas. Another star, Democrat Party. Doug Emhoff, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Biden family. They elevate demonic people. They just do. It's this who they put in charge. So it's worth considering that. And maybe it's persuasive to people who are on the fence. The left has somehow convinced us that they're the ones who are the good guys and we're the bad guys. Democrat good, Republican bad. Just not the case. All right, let's read some more email. This is from Jan Andrews. Hi, Alex. Listening faithfully on YouTube. Thank you for YouTube. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're there. The first person I thought of when the fires began was you. It must be so hard to watch your beloved home turf be scarred as the fires rage on. Our Heavenly Father has you and your beautiful family in the palm of his hands. You've no idea that they're beautiful. They are, but thank you. A small request: is it possible to number your podcasts so I can be sure I've listened to each one? I like to listen when I can pay full attention, and sometimes I get behind. We have our granddaughter, frequently 21 months, and you know how that goes. Thank you for this time with you. I really missed our time together, 6 to 9 a.m. Janie Andrews, beautiful. Thank you so much. It really is heartfelt. It means a lot to me. Misty, should we number the podcast? This is a thing that's done, and some podcasts do it, some don't. I feel like it's sort of silly, and it's also, I kind of like it. I don't know. Email me, aloha@alexmarlow.com if you want me to start numbering podcasts. If we hit a certain threshold of emails, then we'll start doing that. Okay, next one. This is from Antonio Filippone. Sending my prayers to Mr. Khan and his family. That's John Khan, who lost his house. Praying God keeps them safe and helps them rebuild. Thank you, Alex, for all you do. I'm a fan of 3 years now, minus the short break you took. You were missed. So glad you're back. Happy to be back. Loving it. If you guys can tell. Love the show. Love broadcasting. Love connecting with all of you. John's an amazing guy. He was out there fighting fires in his own neighborhood while he was using his press pass with Joel, and they're out there putting out fires. So really, we are not out of the woods here, guys. We are not. All right, here's one from just Joseph. Hello, Alex. Can you address the evident nut job Steve Bannon calling Elon Musk a truly evil guy, a very bad guy? His rhetoric is divisive, to say the least. Steve Bannon's statements are about as divisive and provocative and disruptive as they get. Why is he giving fodder to the left? Please explain. It's one thing to voice his opinion. It's another to call people truly evil. He's being totally irresponsible. So Joseph is upset that Bannon's calling Musk an evil guy. He also calls Zuckerberg one of the worst guys in the world. Bannon's been on absolute fire about this stuff on his War Room show. I'll tell you, I'm sympathetic to Bannon's point, Joseph, and Musk did a lot of good to get Trump elected, and that goes a long, long way with me. And Zuckerberg did nothing to help get Trump elected, but at least seems to be doing the right stuff now. But let's not forget these guys pass, because we don't want to forget that people who lack that sort of intellectual or fundamental grounding in the MAGA movement are, you can't trust them the same level. And we saw this play out last week with Musk and Vivi talking about H-1Bs. They're not coached up. They're new to the movement. And we want to treat them like they're the MAGA rock stars, but they don't get some of the fundamental things that made the America First movement what it is, and is not unlimited H-1Bs. It's not the nerdification of culture. We don't want to nerdify the culture. We want to be the cool kids. There's no wiggle room here. We're not doing nerd rule. So we're doing cool guy rule. Donald Trump's one of the coolest guys on earth. So, and a part of why we won is not the nerd strategy, it's the podcast strategy where all the cool guys were acting like they like Trump now. So we've got to be careful about this. Musk's wealth increased rapidly because he got a sweetheart deal to build a plant in Shanghai. He does R&D in China for Tesla. He said that China rocks. He said that China's leaders care about their people, American leaders don't. So just know that he's a guy that designs our military tech. Zuckerberg tried to buy the election for Joe Biden in 2020. So I'm not all the way where Bannon is, where I'm saying they're truly evil. They're the worst guys. But I'm highly understanding of his argument. And it's important to understand that I would love to interview these guys. It would be very friendly. I would give them their full say. They want to take some tough questions. There'd be no animosity. And I'm optimistic that they really have made a true change of heart. I don't know if they have, but I'm optimistic that they have. Musk is certainly walking the walk, and Zuckerberg sounds very good in these interviews. But you can't forget the entire past, where a lot of us were in the trenches building this America First movement from the ground. That Musk was making hundreds of billions of dollars, largely with China. Zuckerberg was making $100 billion doing stuff like censoring conservatives and trying to buy the election for Joe Biden. So there needs to be more penance and reparations on Zuckerberg's part. So, hot topic. I'm glad that came up. I've been wanting to talk about that. Very hot. Very, very hot. All right. Should we end it there? Should I mention that I got a great cookie recipe from Mary Bargerstock? Send me a snickerdoodle recipe saying I make my own cookies. I don't do the cookies. Mrs. Dr. Marlow does the baking. I do pretty much everything else these days. Got to cook twice over the weekend. That was nice. Got that going. But yeah, recipes, I'm welcome. I will try them. If you send them to me, I'll try them out and I'll tell you which ones worked. You guys helped me on the crock pot pot roast. I messed that up. Never going to repeat that again. All thanks to you all and this terrific audience. All right, that's plenty for today. That's good. We get a lot to do this week. It's going to be an amazing week of news and praying for this country that we have a slightly better week than the last two. That'll be it for today. Thank you for telling 10,000 friends and family members about the show. Thanks to producer Misty. Aloha at alexmarlow.com if you want to correspond. I'll talk to you tomorrow.